Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We have a little treat for you today. We're going to be going over the history of clans in Total War throughout the ages, going back to the hallowed times of Shogun. With me today, I have RTK Adelmo, who has been in the scene for quite some time. And we'll get a perspective from his side on just how the whole development of clans has been throughout all of the games leading up to how they are at the present stage, and a little bit into how they're going to be in the future. So, Adelmo, give us a little background on, I guess, your history with Total War, how you got into it, and kind of like how you got into the multiplayer side of that game as well.
Hi, Valk. So obviously the first game I ever played Total War-wise was Shogun and then Medieval, but both of those games I only played single player. And it was only in about 2004 when Rome came out, I ventured into multiplayer. And it was quite a change from single player, and it opened my eyes to what these games could be.
So did multiplayer, was that always part of Total War even in Shogun, or was that later down the line?
Yeah, they had multiplayer in Shogun. So obviously you're talking, I think it was 2001 that Shogun originally came out. And it was back in the dark ages where not everyone had the internet, but I was unfortunately one of the people who didn't have it then. It's not like now where every household's got it. But there was gaming online in Shogun Total War. That's where we saw the first clans appear.
So the first clans then started in Shogun, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So you had some of the earliest clans were like Celtibros, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that one correctly. It's an old Spanish clan. And Agony. Agony was around in the Shogun Total War. And RTK appeared later on.
Yeah, so I guess with the whole clan stage and the multiplayer scene, I imagine it was quite a bit different than how it is today, with kind of a lot of tournaments constantly going on. I don't know what the tournament scene was like back then, or kind of how that progressed. Was that kind of something that kind of started slowly? Because I don't think there was a Discord even around at that point, where most of the stuff is kind of now organized through.
No, there wouldn't have been Discord. I mean, every clan back then had their own forum, so a lot of it was forum based. If you wanted to communicate to another clan, you wouldn't just hop on their Discord. You would go to their forum, and there was a lot of role play involved in the clan as well. They were highly structured, so you would designate an emissary who would go to another forum, who would put within the asterisk, "Bow, greetings. I hail from RTK clan. How do I find you this day?" and that type of stuff. And that's how the clans evolved. I mean, that's how they began, rather.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's been a lot more formal than at least the Warhammer clans are now, from at least the looks of things.
Yeah, I mean, they're all a lot more casual now. It's a far easier type of thing to get into and to enjoy your time in.
So yes, that kind of rolls into like how RTK, so you're saying that kind of came around back in the Shogun era. So I guess that's probably about when 2000, 2001 time frame then when that first started up then. And then I guess how was that first kind of created with the people back in the day?
So RTK formed in 2002. They were late Shogun Total War era, and they were formed from a splinter from the Dreadmaster clan, who had been quite a successful competitive clan. But a group of the North American players split off from Dreadmasters, formed RTK, led by the King Elrich back then. And within a year, 2 years, they were winning honors and titles and doing really well on the scene. And with the release of Medieval Total War, RTK blossomed and started to get towards the top end of the competitive scale.
So then I know RTK is one of the oldest continually running clans to date. Are any of those other older clans still around and kicking more in either the historical titles, or have they transitioned more towards the fantasy, but maybe in a lesser known state as they are now?
Well, you certainly see some of those early players. RTK is probably the last bastion of a full clan. of the early period. So we've been able, thankfully, to sustain our clan, and it's evolved over the years, but it's still going. It's still the RTK of old. But you'll have heard of clans like Agony, where Creative Assembly Duck was a major part of, and as I mentioned, Celtibros, which was a Spanish clan. I believe you still see some of their members in the EC clan today, but they have more merged with other clans rather than still going on their own boat. As far as I know, in the historical titles, none of the old clans are still with us.
Yeah, I know. The years progressed, when you start getting into like Shogun 2 is one of the games that was more, more touted as one of the better Total War games of the series, and up to that point, it was considered the best and is still considered one of the better Total War titles to date. Was that kind of one of the better periods in terms of the multiplayer and kind of clan scene as well? Probably, I would imagine, to be seeing a lot more newer faces kind of coming into the fold around that time period anyways.
Yeah, so with Shogun 2, for whatever reason, Creative Assembly decided to take a different tact on the multiplayer scene with that one. They not only did they have the historical battles, which you'd seen in the previous Total War titles and the Total War titles since, which is you select an army based on funds against another army based on funds, but you have access to all the units. They created what was called the Avatar system, and the scope of it was much greater than anything we've seen before or since in the multiplayer. It was based on a map, and clans would compete against each other to control territories on the map. It's something a lot of Total War players would like to see Creative Assembly make some kind of attempt to do again.
So that wasn't like, because right now it's more one army's faces another. That was more of an objective-based multiplayer than almost. Arena's a completely kind of different beast entirely, but it does have its own kind of objectives, I believe. So it was more. Did it still have like the army versus army type of, like, I guess, team deathmatch as you would maybe see in more other mainstream games?
Yeah, it had very similar aspects to what we see now in Total War and the Total War battles, but it had it within the framework of a campaign. So your clan would be trying to take territories, dominate a territory, and there will be promotion between leagues, and whoever held the most sections of the clan, they will get promoted, and those at the bottom will get demoted. There was also objectives within the battle map called dojos, which would grant your army certain bonuses if you were able to capture them, and so you had to force your opponents off those dojos. It was quite an innovative thing that Creative Assembly did with it.
And I guess around that Shogun era, or I guess the NA time period up to the present time, what would you consider to be more of the, the golden era of the multiplayer and kind of clan scene? I think in terms of numbers right now, it's probably would be considered that golden era in terms of like total participants, but like in terms of just like clans, like intercommunications and or organized tournaments and stuff like that, what would be considered the best era for that?
So I think they are two different questions there, Valk. You've got the golden era of clans, which I would place at throughout Rome Total War, Barbarian Invasion, and maybe Medieval 2 Total War as well. And the reason for that is you'd come off Shogun and Medieval, the community was growing. You came into Rome and into Barbarian Invasion and into Medieval 2, but you had a global lobby, so everyone could chat to each other. If I posted in the lobby, everyone in that lobby could see it. It was a glorious thing, but it was a double-edged sword, because some of the things that were posted were not so ideal, which is, I believe, why Creative Assembly had to get rid of it. But the bonus for the clans was that they were able to recruit quite easily. They got to know people in the lobby. It was like walking into your local bar, and you would see all the familiar faces, and you would say, "Hiya." In terms of competitive Total War and the tournament scene, I don't think we're in a better spot than we've ever been with Warhammer 2. And the Warhammer World Championships is like the icing on the cake.
So I guess that kind of leads us into out as things are in the present era with Warhammer coming out in 2016. I know that was kind of a rough start into the fantasy world with that particular game, but followed by only a year later is when Warhammer 2 did come out with a lot of improvements based on the original game. But I know like it was kind of almost like the Wild West compared to how it is now in Warhammer 1.
Yeah, there are a few people that will look back on Warhammer 1 with rose-tinted glasses and think how beautiful it was, how simple it was. But the more factions they've added, this game has just got better and better. And to be fair to the people that create the game, they keep trying to listen to the community to affect balance changes at a far more regular pace than they have in previous titles. So CA are listening, they're doing their best, and they're giving us a really playable game.
So it also, I mean, that was a rather big shift in terms of just like overall gameplay and just mechanics in general going into the Warhammer series. Did that have a kind of a lasting effect on kind of all the other clans that had already been like established and stuff like that? Because everything up until that point had been historical titles, with everything pretty grounded in reality. Now that we're going into the fantasy realm, did that have a big impact on the clan scene? At least in a initial standpoint, maybe it's kind of rebounded since then. But how was it at that initial kind of transition?
Yeah, for sure. So two things happened with the start of Warhammer. You had a lot of the, well, more than two things, but you had a lot of the traditional historical Total War elite players. I'll call them elite, as in they would look down on the fantasy setting as something they would not want to touch. And we did lose a lot of players from that. On the counterpoint to that, what we have gained is a lot of players that maybe in their childhoods used to play Warhammer tabletop. They've jumped on the Total War scene, and you have seen a merging of old Total War players and new Total War players. So the Warhammer world has met the Total War world. The other thing that happened, of course, is that around the time of Warhammer being released, maybe just a little before, is that we had the release of Arena, and a lot of the old multiplayer clans moved to Arena, which sadly Arena didn't last the distance.
Yeah, so I know with like Rome 2 still has a fairly decent player base right now. Do you hear a whole lot on that side from the historical standpoint? Because I really haven't heard a whole lot because of I guess historical titles to an extent. We've had like Thrones of Bretonnia. There's been Three Kingdoms and Troy, which haven't been necessarily traditional historical titles, but have still been more of that. It's a lot closer to that than at least the fantasy realm. So have you been seeing, or at least heard anything more? It kind of is people still favoring like Rome 2, or like how was the testing grounds in like Three Kingdoms?
Yeah, Rome 2's got quite a large scene still, especially if you go to the Russian community. You'll find a lot of VM players, VM Militaria players who still play Rome 2. They still play Attila to a degree. Not many at all play Thrones of Britannia, and as far as I know, Three Kingdoms sadly died the death on the release. There was some errors made with the multiplayer for that the community just failed to get behind on them. And likewise with Troy, I'm sorry to say that's been a bit of a lead balloon.
Yeah, especially with how the implementation of the multiplayer just kind of been in like little crumbs here and there, slowly getting features that have been in other titles in the past. And then I guess that with how the current stage of like Warhammer 2, we have plenty of clans currently active. I mean, you have XMT, we have, of course, RTK has still been around for a long time. And you have, I mean, VM, which is a very well-established clan that I believe has been around for quite some time. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I can remember playing Diablo, who certainly used to be the leader of VM back in Medieval 2. So they've been around since 2007, somewhere around that period. I'm not 100% sure, but in that ballpark.
I know there's still a lot of clans as well from various like nationalities. I know there's, I think, a couple Italian clans, some more Spanish Central. I mean, ODM is a French, mostly a French-speaking clan, but
Becoming more multinational.
yes, becoming more multinational as time kind of goes on. I don't know how many of the other clans that are currently would be prominent today have been in the past titles going back few years, many years, or I don't know if you have any knowledge on that base.
Well, there are a few. So obviously, BM, as you said, has been around. ODM have been around for quite a while now, and Han Clan. So Han Clan, we don't see a huge amount of them. These are the Chinese clan, or one of the Chinese clans, and they certainly go back to Rome Total War. At least they might go back earlier.
So yeah, now kind of I guess we're looking more towards the future with the most recent announcement of Warhammer 3, which, as far as I am aware, that is the last of the Warhammer trilogy. And then after that point, we're kind of open as to what Creative Assembly is going to be doing at that point. I know I've heard like rumors of either like a 40K series or something like that, if they want to stick kind of the fantasy realm or at least dabble more into that. But there's still plenty of historical titles, and as kind of a big unknown as to where the Total War titles are going to be going after Warhammer 3. And I know, especially with Warhammer 2, they've been supporting that with like DLC, constant DLCs throughout the years, new ones every, I don't know, a couple, 2, 3 a year. But yeah, with once Warhammer going into Warhammer 3, I think that's going to be a pretty clean transition with how the current, I guess, the multiplayer scene, the clans and all that stuff, where everyone's pretty heavily into the Warhammer titles. But once that's kind of slowly kind of works its way out, do you see a shift back to the historical titles? I imagine it's not going to be quite how it used to be, but something more of a middle ground almost.
I think it's inevitable that CA will release more historical titles in the future, but based on how successful this link up with Games Workshop has been, it would not shock me if there is an Age of Sigmar release somewhere down the line. I'm still hopeful we'll get a Westeros Total War, because we all know we're all waiting for those final books of G.R.R. Martin. And yeah, that'd be nice as well. But hey, wherever the road takes us in Total War, we'll keep playing.
Yeah, and especially with how the tournament scene is at right now, with all of the massive amount of new people, I'm sure we're going to be seeing plenty of new faces in all of the different clans that are currently around right now. But otherwise,
absolutely. Oh, sorry, Bel. Oh. Absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, it's definitely going to be it's a growing community, and I definitely am looking forward to kind of what the clans shape out in the near future, far future, and kind of how everything kind of works with the ever evolving games that keep coming out with Total War. Should be a lot of good fun and a lot to look forward to. But anyways, yeah, I think that just about wraps things up, unless you have anything else you want to add, any more of Adelmo fun facts to add to the mix.
No, but I do just want to say how excited that obviously a lot of people in the community are about the Total War World Championships, and the chance to get to play and to meet these new folks that are coming into the tournament. It's refreshing, and hopefully, you know, they'll stick with us and they'll grow as players, and we'll get to know them all over the course of time. So pleasure to have you all in the community.
Yeah, and thank you as well, Adelmo, for joining me today. It was great to chat and kind of go through the ages of Total War with the clans and the multiplayer scene. It was a great insight into that era, which many people probably were not a part of. Very few, I'm sure, are left from that age that are still at least actively participating in the current state of things. But I think that should be just about it. And again, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Val.
Yeah, and without further ado, thank you all for tuning in as well to our little interview here. It's going to be the first foray into this kind of style of things, but it was good fun, and I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, have a good one.